The dense forest surrounding Mount Rainier is silent, save for the whisper of the wind through the towering pines. It's a place of breathtaking beauty, where nature's majesty meets its untamed ferocity. Amidst this backdrop, a mystery unfolds, one that would baffle investigators and haunt a family for years. The day was supposed to be an escape, a chance for the couple to reconnect. Oliver Hayes, a 38-year-old software engineer with a penchant for adventure, had always felt most alive in the wilderness. His wife, Lily, shared his love for the outdoors, though she was more cautious, often teasing him about his fearless approach to nature's challenges. Oliver was the kind of man whose laughter could fill a room, whose presence made everyone feel a little warmer. Born and raised in Seattle, his weekends were often spent exploring the trails and peaks that surrounded his city. Friends described him as reliable, a rock in times of trouble, and someone who never turned down an opportunity to help others. On that fateful Saturday, the couple set off early, the morning sun casting long shadows as they drove towards Mount Rainier. It was a routine trip, one they'd taken countless times before. Yet, as the day unfolded, it would prove anything but ordinary. Oliver had mapped out a new trail, one less traveled, promising Lily it would offer views unlike any they'd seen. As they ascended, the air grew thinner, the path narrower, the world shrinking to the sound of their footsteps and the occasional call of a distant bird. Then it happened. In a moment that defied comprehension, Oliver vanished. 1 minute he was there, sturdy and sure-footed. The next he was gone, swallowed by the abyss below the cliff. Lily's scream echoed through the canyons, a sound that would linger in the air long after the dust had settled. Panic-stricken, Lily scrambled to the cliff's edge, her heart pounding, eyes searching for any sign of her husband. But the depths revealed nothing, just the ominous silence of the mountains. She fumbled for her phone, her hands trembling as she dialed 911, her voice breaking as she tried to convey the unimaginable. The operator's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the chaos in Lily's mind. She repeated the details, each word a desperate plea for help, for someone to find Oliver, to bring him back from wherever he had disappeared. As the call ended, the reality of her situation sank in. Alone on a remote trail, with the sun beginning its descent, Lily could do nothing but wait and hope. It was the beginning of an ordeal that would test the limits of her endurance and the strength of her love. And so, a mystery was born. A husband, loved and cherished, vanished in an instant. How could a seemingly ordinary day turn into a nightmare? What secrets did the mountain hold? As night fell, casting its shadow over the land, the questions hung in the air, unanswered, as the search for Oliver Hayes began. As the last rays of sunlight slipped behind the towering peaks, the chill of the mountains enveloped Lily. Her mind raced with images of Oliver, of his wide smile and infectious laughter, now haunting in the solitude. She found herself replaying the moment he disappeared, searching for anything she might have missed, something that could make sense of the chaos. Oliver Hayes was more than just a hiker. He was a devoted husband, a dedicated teacher, and a man whose zest for life was contagious. Born and raised in the bustling heart of Seattle, his love for the outdoors was unparalleled. Every weekend he and Lily would escape the city's chaos, seeking solace in the embrace of nature, finding adventure in the untamed. Their journey to Mount Rainier was supposed to be another of their many adventures, a celebration of their 10th anniversary. Oliver had meticulously planned the hike, poring over maps and trail guides, eager to surprise Lily with a view that would take her breath away. But now the mountains loomed like silent sentinels, holding their secrets close. As emergency teams mobilized, Lily remained on the line with the 911 operator, providing details through broken sobs. She described Oliver's fall, the sound of loose stones cascading into the abyss, the sudden emptiness where he once stood. The operator assured her that help was on the way, urging her to stay where she was, to conserve her energy and warmth as best she could. The first responders arrived with a flurry of activity, their voices low and determined as they assessed the situation. Lily watched helplessly as they set up ropes and harnesses, peering over the cliff's edge, their faces grim. The search was fraught with danger, The fading light and treacherous terrain posed challenges that only the most experienced could navigate. Despite their efforts, as night deepened, Oliver remained elusive, a shadow swallowed by the vastness. The search was called off until dawn, a decision that weighed heavily on Lily. She was escorted down the mountain, each step feeling like a betrayal, as if she were leaving him behind. Back in the safety of the ranger station, Lily found herself surrounded by well-meaning strangers, faces blurred by her tears. Questions came at her from all directions, details about Oliver, about their life together, about what she saw in that moment of despair. Each inquiry felt like an accusation, a reminder of her helplessness. As the clock ticked towards midnight, the reality of Oliver's disappearance settled in. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a mystery that defied understanding. The mountain had taken him, and with each passing minute, hope seemed to slip further away. Yet beneath the despair, a steely resolve began to form. Lily knew Oliver better than anyone. She knew his instincts, his survival skills, and his uncanny ability to find his way out of the most daunting situations. She clung to the belief that he was out there somewhere waiting to be found. The night stretched on, an endless expanse of time and questions. As dawn approached, the search teams prepared to resume their efforts, their determination renewed. But as they ventured back into the wild, an unsettling thought lingered in the air. Was Oliver's disappearance a mere accident, or was there something more sinister at play? And so, as the sun slowly crept over the horizon, the search for Oliver Hayes began anew, driven by love, desperation, and the unyielding hope that somewhere in the vastness, answers awaited. As the first light of dawn broke over Mount Rainier, search teams assembled with renewed vigor. Their strategy was meticulously planned, each member briefed on their specific area to cover. Helicopters were prepared, their engines a low hum of anticipation, ready to sweep over the cliffs where Oliver was last seen. The air was crisp, yet the tension was palpable, a tangible force driving everyone forward. At the ranger station, Lily sat quietly, her eyes red from sleeplessness, but her spirit unbroken. She clutched a thermos of lukewarm coffee, barely tasting it as she stared at the map spread out before her. Beside her, a young detective from the local precinct, Officer Daniels, began his questioning anew. His voice was calm, almost soothing, as he asked Lily to recount once more the events of that fateful day. Lily's words were measured, her recollection precise. She described the hike, their laughter, the moment Oliver insisted on venturing closer to the edge for a better view. Her voice faltered as she reached the moment of his disappearance, the image of him slipping, a blur against the rocky backdrop forever etched in her mind. Daniels listened intently, jotting down notes, his brow furrowed in concentration. As the morning progressed, other hikers who had been on the trail were interviewed. Most had seen nothing unusual, their focus on the breathtaking views rather than the people around them. However, one couple mentioned hearing a yell, a brief cry that echoed through the trees, but they had thought little of it at the time. Their account, though vague, was noted with interest. In the small mountain town nearby, news of the disappearance spread rapidly. Oliver's family arrived, their faces a mixture of hope and dread. His sister, Emily, embraced Lily tightly, whispering reassurances that felt hollow in the cold air. Reporters gathered outside the ranger station, eager for any scrap of information. Their presence added another layer of pressure, their camera lenses capturing every flicker of emotion. But as the hours ticked by, the initial fervor of the search began to reveal cracks. A miscommunication about the search grid led to an area being combed twice, wasting precious time. A call for additional resources was delayed, the request lost in a tangle of bureaucracy. And perhaps most critically, a small detail in Lily's account was overlooked, a detail that would later prove pivotal. By evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon once more, the search was called off for the night. Exhausted volunteers returned to base, their faces lined with fatigue and frustration. Lily stood at the edge of the clearing, staring into the gathering darkness, willing herself to believe that tomorrow would bring a breakthrough. Back at the ranger station, Officer Daniels reviewed his notes, a nagging doubt creeping into his mind. He replayed Lily's words, the conviction in her voice, and the shadow of guilt that seemed to linger just beneath the surface. There was something there, something unspoken. As he closed his notebook, a determination took root. He would find the missing piece of this puzzle, whatever it took. And so, with the mountain shrouded in night once more, the mystery deepened. Unanswered questions hung in the air, each one a thread waiting to be unraveled. What had really happened to Oliver Hayes on that cliffside? As the search for truth continued, one thing was certain. The first 48 hours had passed, and with them, the easy answers had slipped away. The dawn of a new day cast a pale light over the rugged landscape, and with it, a renewed sense of urgency gripped the search teams gathering at the base of Mount Rainier. Officers, volunteers, and park rangers exchanged determined nods, their breath visible in the crisp morning air. The mountain loomed above, silent and indifferent, as they prepared to set out again. Officer Daniels, having spent a restless night piecing together the fragments of the case, approached Lily with a measured calm. Her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, her voice barely above a whisper as she recounted the previous day's events once more. This time, Daniels listened intently, focusing on every nuance and inflection, aware that the smallest detail could hold the key to finding Oliver. Meanwhile, the search perimeter expanded, encompassing areas previously neglected due to the earlier miscommunication. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their searchlights cutting through the early morning mist, while search dogs, their noses to the ground, moved with an urgency that mirrored the humans around them. In the midst of the organized chaos, Emily stood apart, her gaze fixed on the tree line. A sense of unease gnawed at her, a feeling she couldn't quite shake. She watched as Lily moved mechanically through the motions, something in her sister-in-law's demeanor striking a discordant note. Yet Emily pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the hope that today would bring them closer to Oliver. Inside the ranger station, Officer Daniels met with the team, their faces a mix of determination and fatigue. The discussion was intense, with each officer contributing their observations. It was then that Daniels brought up Lily's account once more, pointing out the subtle inconsistencies that had been overlooked in the initial frenzy. His words hung in the air, a challenge to the assumptions made in those critical first hours. Did Lily truly see Oliver fall, or was there more to the story? The team pondered, the weight of their responsibility palpable as they considered the implications of a potential oversight. As the hours ticked by, the search continued, each sweep of the area yielding nothing but more questions. The media presence grew, their broadcasts painting a picture of a community united in crisis, yet unable to provide the answers so desperately sought by Oliver's family and friends. Back at the station, Daniels and his colleagues faced a sobering reality. The first 48 hours had come and gone, and with them, the chance of finding Oliver alive had diminished. Yet, Daniels remained resolute, determined to untangle the web of confusion and find the truth. The day wore on, the sun inching towards the horizon, casting long shadows over the search area, and as evening descended once more, the team regrouped, their spirits dampened but not defeated. They would persist, driven by the hope that tomorrow would bring clarity. In the quiet moments of reflection as the mountain stood watch, questions lingered in the chilled air. What secrets did this majestic, unforgiving terrain hold? And what truths would emerge from the shadows as the search for Oliver Hayes continued? The mystery deepened, and the story was far from over. As darkness settled over Mount Rainier, Officer Daniels sat quietly in his patrol car, reviewing the notes from the past 2 days. The glow from his laptop cast a dim light, illuminating the weariness etched on his face. The clock on the dashboard ticked methodically, a relentless reminder of the time slipping away. In those crucial first 48 hours, they had combed every inch of the cliffside where Lily claimed she had last seen Oliver. Search and rescue teams had rappelled down the steep rock faces, their voices echoing off the cliffs as they called out into the void, hoping for any sign of life. Yet, the mountain remained silent. Within the confines of the ranger station, a makeshift command center bustled with activity. Maps covered the walls, dotted with markers indicating areas searched and those yet untouched. Radios crackled with updates, each transmission a mixture of hope and frustration. But amidst the chaos, a nagging doubt persisted. Lily Hayes, Oliver's wife, was seated in a corner, her eyes red from tears and exhaustion. She clutched a photograph of Oliver, her fingers tracing the edges as if holding on to him through the image. Family members surrounded her, their faces a canvas of anguish and worry. They spoke in hushed tones, their words interspersed with prayers and reassurances. Outside, the media had gathered, cameras poised, capturing the unfolding drama. Reporters relayed the story to the nation, their voices tinged with urgency. Was this another tragic accident in the wilderness, or was there a darker narrative lurking beneath the surface? Officer Daniels knew they had to tread carefully. In the initial hours, the team had focused on the search, the assumption being that Oliver might have slipped, a victim of the treacherous landscape. But as details emerged, inconsistencies in Lily's story tugged at Daniels' instincts. He reflected on the witness statements gathered so far. A group of hikers had been near the area at the time of Oliver's disappearance. They recalled seeing Lily and Oliver together, but their observations of the couple's interactions were vague, clouded by distance and the intervening forest. One hiker, however, had mentioned seeing Oliver alone, seemingly agitated, shortly before the incident. This revelation gnawed at Daniels. Why would Oliver have been alone if Lily claimed to have been with him the entire time? And why did the other hikers not hear any cries for help if Oliver had indeed fallen? In the early hours of the investigation, a critical error had been made. Focused on the physical search, the team had neglected to fully verify Lily's account. It was a blunder that now loomed large, casting a shadow over their efforts. Daniels resolved to rectify this. He approached Lily gently, his voice calm yet probing. Her answers were measured, her eyes darting as if searching for the right words. But as she spoke, a new layer of uncertainty emerged, her narrative shifting subtly each time she recounted the events. In the background, the family watched, their expressions a mix of support and suspicion. As much as they wanted to believe Lily, the cracks in her story were becoming harder to ignore. As the night deepened, Daniels gathered his team once more. They needed a new strategy, one that would unravel the truth hidden within the tangled web of facts and emotions. They would revisit every detail, re-interview every witness, and scrutinize every piece of evidence. With the first 48 hours behind them and no sign of Oliver, the pressure mounted. Yet in the stillness of the night, Daniels felt a flicker of determination. Somewhere in the shadows lay the answers they sought. They just had to find the right path to uncover them. And as the mountain loomed, silent and formidable, the search for Oliver Hayes took on a new sense of urgency. The clock continued to tick, and the mystery only deepened. As dawn broke over the jagged peaks of Mount Rainier, the investigation team regrouped, weary yet resolute. Daniels, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee, outlined their new approach. They would begin by re-examining the timeline, scrutinizing every second of that fateful day. The team needed fresh eyes on the case, unclouded by the assumptions that had led them astray. Rumors began to circulate in the nearby towns. The local cafe buzzed with speculation, patrons leaning in conspiratorially as they exchanged theories. Some whispered about a secret affair, others about financial troubles Oliver might have been hiding. The small community, once close-knit, now crackled with suspicion, each rumor adding another layer of complexity to the already convoluted narrative. Amidst the chatter, a name emerged, a local guide known for his intimate knowledge of the mountain trails and a temper as unpredictable as the weather. He had been seen near the trailhead the day Oliver vanished. Daniels' team tracked him down, intrigued yet cautious. The guide, rugged and taciturn, bristled at their questions, his answers clipped and defensive. The focus on the guide spread like wildfire. Some townsfolk vouched for his character, swearing he was as solid as the rocks he climbed. Others recounted tales of his fiery disputes, painting him as a man capable of impulsive actions. But as the team delved deeper, inconsistencies in his alibi began to surface. Was this a lead or merely a distraction from the truth? Meanwhile, Lily's presence in the town became a spectacle of its own. She navigated the whispered accusations and sidelong glances with a stoic facade. Yet inside, the weight of suspicion bore down on her. Her attempts to maintain Oliver's innocence and her own credibility seemed increasingly desperate. each interview leaving her more isolated than before. Despite the mounting pressure, Daniels remained skeptical of the guide's involvement. Something about the situation felt off, the puzzle pieces misaligned. Yet with no new evidence and the trail growing colder by the day, the team had little choice but to pursue every possibility, however unlikely. The investigation stalled, the initial momentum waning. Theories spun in circles around them, each as plausible as it was improbable. As days turned to weeks, the sensation of urgency dulled, replaced by a creeping resignation. The case, once vibrant with promise, began to slip into the realm of the unsolved, a chilling reminder of the unforgiving nature of the wilderness and the secrets it could keep. In a final effort to reignite the investigation, Daniels called for a community meeting. He hoped to unearth any overlooked details, a stray comment or observation that might point them in the right direction. But as the meeting unfolded, it became clear that fear and mistrust had taken root, leaving the town divided and reticent. As the evening drew to a close, Daniels stood before the dwindling crowd, his determination undiminished. He knew they were missing something crucial, a hidden truth lurking just beyond their grasp. The mountains stood silent, indifferent to their plight, and as the last of the daylight faded, the challenge of uncovering Oliver Hayes' fate loomed larger than ever. Daniels watched the townspeople disperse slowly, their murmurs dissolving into the cool evening air. The meeting had yielded little more than a tangled web of speculation and fear. As he stood alone in the dimming light, he felt the weight of the unsolved case pressing heavily on his shoulders. The mountain, shrouded in twilight, seemed to mock their futile efforts. Rumors began to circulate, each more outlandish than the last. Some whispered that Oliver had staged his own disappearance, escaping a life that was too mundane for his adventurous spirit. Others speculated about a secret affair, suggesting that Lily might have had her own motives for wanting her husband gone. These whispers clouded the investigation, turning friends into suspects and casting shadows on innocent lives. In particular, suspicion fell on a local man, Jeremy Collins, known for his solitary hikes and reclusive nature. He had been in the area on the day Oliver vanished, seen by a few as he made his way up a lesser-known trail. His reticence to speak with authorities only fueled the gossip, branding him a convenient scapegoat for a community desperate for answers. Daniels, however, remained cautious. Jeremy's odd behavior could be explained by his well-known aversion to crowds and social interaction, yet the pressure to produce results was mounting, and the town's impatience was palpable. Interviews with Jeremy were inconclusive, his alibi vague and uncorroborated. Still, Daniels couldn't shake the feeling that they were chasing phantoms, the real perpetrator slipping further into the shadows. Meanwhile, Lily's life became a spectacle, her every move scrutinized, her every word dissected for hidden meaning. The isolation was suffocating, the whispers relentless. Friends turned wary, unsure of where the truth lay. In her heart, she clung to the belief that Oliver had not simply vanished, that there was a rational explanation for his disappearance. As weeks stretched into months, the investigation's momentum slowed to a crawl. Leads dried up, and the once urgent search became little more than routine paperwork. The mountain, indifferent and vast, held its secrets tight. The case began to fade from the headlines, overshadowed by newer stories and fresher tragedies. Daniels refused to let go. He spent long nights poring over evidence, re-examining witness statements and piecing together the fragmented narrative. He knew that somewhere within the chaos lay a strand of truth, a thread that could unravel the mystery that bound them all. The breakthrough, if it came, would need to be extraordinary, something that could reignite the faltering investigation and cut through the fog of rumor and doubt. But for now the case drifted perilously close to the cold, the specter of Oliver Hayes, a haunting reminder of the answers just out of reach. As Daniels prepared to leave the office late one evening, a phone call jolted him back to alertness. A voice, low and hesitant, claimed to have information, something seen on the mountain, something that might change everything. Daniels listened intently, hope flickering anew. Could this be the lead they so desperately needed, or just another dead end in an investigation fraught with them? The question hung in the air as Daniels hurried to arrange a meeting, the promise of a new development rekindling the fire within him. The mountain's secrets might be vast, but so was his determination to uncover them. Daniels sat in his dimly lit office, the glow from his computer casting shadows across the room as he listened intently to the caller. The voice on the other end was shaky, like a leaf clinging to a branch in a storm. The woman, calling from a payphone, claimed she had seen something unusual on the day of Oliver's disappearance, a figure moving along the ridge, darting into the woods with urgency that suggested more than just a casual hike. As Daniels scribbled down details, he couldn't shake the feeling that this could be the breakthrough they needed. Yet he had been led down false trails before, and more than once hope had dissolved into disappointment. The next morning, Daniels met the woman in a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Her eyes flickered with apprehension, darting around the room as if every shadow held a threat. She spoke in hushed tones, recounting a sighting that seemed both mundane and significant, a man clad in dark clothing, moving with a purpose that belied the serene setting. Daniels pressed for more details, but the woman offered little else. Frustration gnawed at him as he realized her account, while intriguing, lacked the concrete evidence needed to propel the investigation forward. He thanked her and promised to follow up, though his mind raced with more questions than answers. Back at the station, Daniels shared the new lead with his team. The mood was cautious. The case had seen its share of dead ends. Yet a renewed sense of purpose rippled through the room, even if it was tinged with skepticism. As days turned into weeks, the investigation into Oliver's disappearance continued to stagnate. The initial flurry of activity had given way to a slow, grinding search for truths hidden beneath layers of speculation and silence. Rumors swirled within the community, each more outlandish than the last. Some whispered about a love triangle gone awry. Others suggested a shadowy figure from Oliver's past had come to claim him. The pressure mounted on Lily, who remained a figure of suspicion in the eyes of many. She was often seen alone, her once vibrant presence now muted by grief and the relentless scrutiny of those around her. Friends who once offered solace now kept a wary distance, their own doubts a silent barrier. One afternoon, as Daniels replayed the woman's account in his mind, his attention was drawn to a name that had surfaced in the investigation: Ethan Caldwell, a local who had been camping near the area the day Oliver disappeared. His story seemed innocuous at first, but inconsistencies began to emerge upon closer examination. Ethan's alibi was shaky, and his reasons for being near the cliffs that day felt contrived. Daniels decided to bring him in for questioning, hoping to either confirm or dispel his suspicions. The interrogation room was sterile and cold, reflecting the tension that hung in the air. Ethan, a wiry man with nervous energy, fidgeted under Daniels' steady gaze. As the questioning progressed, Ethan's facade of calm began to crack. He stumbled over his words, his story unraveling with each probing question. But just as Daniels felt he was closing in, Ethan's demeanor shifted. He grew defensive, demanding a lawyer and abruptly ending the interview. The potential lead fizzled as Ethan was released, his involvement murkier than before. The investigation, once again, hit a wall. Desperation gnawed at Daniels, the weight of the unsolved case pressing down on him with relentless force. Outside, the mountain loomed large, its secrets still buried beneath its rugged terrain. As Daniels stood in the parking lot, the crisp air biting through his jacket, he knew the path forward would be fraught with obstacles. Yet, he remained committed, knowing that somewhere, somehow, the truth awaited discovery. The relentless march of time threatened to bury the case in the annals of forgotten mysteries, but Daniels, with determination forged from years of chasing shadows, resolved to keep searching, even as the investigation teetered on the brink of going cold. Years slipped by like grains of sand through an hourglass, the case of the vanished hiker, slowly fading from the public's consciousness. The community around Mount Rainier, once buzzing with speculation and theories, began to settle back into its quiet routine. New stories took precedence in the local news, and Oliver's disappearance was relegated to the back pages, a haunting yet distant memory. For Oliver's family, however, the passage of time did nothing to heal the wound left by his absence. His wife, now accustomed to the whispers and sideways glances, carried on with a stoic resilience that masked her inner turmoil. Every anniversary of Oliver's disappearance brought with it a renewed wave of grief, a reminder of the life they once shared. The family refused to let the case slip into obscurity. They pooled their resources, hiring private investigators to continue the search for answers. Each investigator brought a fresh set of eyes, yet the outcome remained frustratingly the same: leads that led nowhere, clues that dissipated like mist in the morning sun. The mountain, steadfast and unyielding, seemed to guard its secrets jealously. Even as hope waned, the family's resolve did not. They organized annual hikes in Oliver's honor, inviting the community to join them in remembrance. These gatherings, somber yet uplifting, served as a testament to their unyielding hope and a reminder that Oliver's story was far from over. Daniels, now a veteran in his field, with the case still etched deeply in his mind, stayed in touch with the family. He would occasionally visit, offering updates on any new developments, though these meetings grew less frequent over the years. His own frustration mirrored theirs. The case was a puzzle with missing pieces, an enigma that eluded resolution. Then, as if the universe sought to rekindle the dying embers of the investigation, a breakthrough of sorts emerged. A local hiker, exploring a less traveled path near the cliffs, stumbled upon a fragment of clothing ensnared in the underbrush. It was weathered and torn, but unmistakably a piece of Oliver's jacket, a fact confirmed by a faded label bearing his name. The discovery reignited the investigation, casting a spotlight once more on the cold case. Daniels, invigorated by this new evidence, revisited the scene with renewed vigor. The jacket fragment suggested that perhaps the original search had been too narrow, that the rugged terrain might have concealed more than they ever imagined. But as Daniels stood on the precipice, gazing out over the vast expanse below, he knew this was only the beginning. The mountain, with its treacherous cliffs and hidden crevices, still held its secrets close. As the sun dipped behind the jagged skyline, he felt the weight of time pressing against him, a reminder that the truth, though elusive, was out there waiting to be uncovered. What else lay hidden in the shadows of Mount Rainier? And could this new lead finally unravel the mystery that had gripped the lives of so many for so long? The questions hung in the air, the answers tantalizingly close yet maddeningly out of reach. For years the town of Ashford lived in the shadow of Mount Rainier, its imposing presence a constant reminder of the mystery left unsolved. The community, once abuzz with speculation and whispers, had largely moved on, their lives marked by the passage of time and the demands of everyday existence. But for the family of Oliver Hayes, time had stood still, each day a reminder of the absence that loomed over their lives. Oliver's wife, Emily, had become a pillar of strength, her resolve unbroken even as the years stretched into decades. She organized annual hikes in Oliver's memory, drawing locals and visitors alike, each gathering a silent pledge that his story would not be forgotten. These treks, both somber and hopeful, became a ritual of remembering, a thread connecting the past to the present. Privately, Emily's search for answers never ceased. She hired private investigators, scoured records, and even consulted psychics, desperate to grasp any thread that might lead her to the truth. Her home was a testament to her quest, walls lined with maps and photographs, pinpoints marking every sighting, every clue, each piece of evidence a whisper in the deafening silence of the unknown. The community, once vibrant with theories and conjecture, had largely moved on. New families arrived, old ones left, and the case of Oliver Hayes became a footnote in the town's history, a cautionary tale told around campfires and at school gatherings. Yet, in hushed tones, Oliver's name was still spoken with reverence, a ghostly presence that lingered in the collective consciousness. Daniels, now a seasoned investigator with a career marked by successes and failures, found himself drawn back to the case time and again. The discovery of Oliver's jacket had breathed new life into his pursuit, yet the mountain remained stubbornly silent, its secrets buried beneath layers of rock and time. He spent countless hours poring over the case files, revisiting witness statements, and analyzing the terrain with a fresh perspective. The jacket fragment, though significant, was but a single piece of a much larger puzzle. As he traced Oliver's last known steps, Daniels couldn't shake the feeling that the answer lay just beyond his grasp, tantalizingly close, yet infuriatingly elusive. Emily's determination never waned. She reached out to media outlets, hoping to reignite public interest, and her efforts were not in vain. A true crime podcast caught wind of the story, and soon Oliver's disappearance was once again thrust into the spotlight, a spark in the long-standing darkness that had surrounded the case. But even as the world turned its gaze back to Mount Rainier, the mountain remained indifferent, its secret still cloaked in mystery. For Emily, Daniels, and the town of Ashford, the question lingered like a spectre. What had really happened to Oliver Hayes? And would the mountain ever reveal its truth? As the years passed, a new generation grew up with the legend of Oliver Hayes, a story of love, loss, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Little did they know, the mountain was about to give up another piece of its enigmatic puzzle, a revelation that would send shockwaves through the community and bring them one step closer to uncovering the mystery that had haunted them for so long. But what or who would finally break the silence of the mountain? And could this new revelation lead to the answers that had eluded them for so many years? The truth was, out there, waiting to be discovered, hidden in the shadows of Mount Rainier. The years drifted by like the snowflakes that blanketed Mount Rainier each winter, silent, persistent, and unyielding. Oliver Hayes' disappearance, once a fresh wound for his loved ones and the community, became a faded scar, whispered about in hushed tones, or mentioned over coffee in the local diner. Emily, Oliver's wife, remained steadfast in her quest for answers. Her life became a tapestry of quiet determination interwoven with moments of deep sorrow. Every year she organized a memorial hike to the place where Oliver was last seen, drawing friends, family, and a few curious strangers. These pilgrimages, though emotionally taxing, were Emily's way of keeping Oliver's memory alive and the case in the public eye. The Hayes family home, nestled in the outskirts of Ashford, became a shrine to Oliver's memory. A wall in the living room was dedicated to him, adorned with photographs capturing joyful moments. Oliver laughing on a hiking trail, Oliver at their wedding, Oliver cradling their newborn daughter. Each image was a reminder of the life they once had, a life that felt increasingly distant with every passing year. Emily's daughter, now in her teens, grew up with the enigma of her father's disappearance as a constant backdrop. It shaped her childhood, casting shadows over her milestones, from her first day of school to her high school graduation. Yet, she inherited her mother's resilience, fueled by the desire to one day uncover the truth about her father's fate. Meanwhile, Detective Daniels, though retired, found himself unable to completely detach from the case. His evenings often involved sifting through old notes and maps, his mind tracing paths through the mountains that he had walked so many times before. He knew every crevice and cliff by heart, yet the answer remained elusive, like a whisper carried away on the wind. The passage of time saw the town of Ashford evolve. New families moved in, attracted by the beauty and tranquility of life near the mountain. To them, Oliver's story was a local legend, a cautionary tale murmured during campfire gatherings, or a puzzle that intrigued the occasional hiker who ventured too far off the beaten path. But beneath the surface, beneath the veneer of moving on, there lay a community still haunted by the unanswered questions. The unsolved mystery of Oliver Hayes lingered, an unwelcome guest at every gathering. Some speculated about foul play, others whispered about the mountain's wrath, and a few held on to the hope that Oliver might have somehow survived, living a new life far from the shadows of Mount Rainier. Emily's private investigation never ceased. She hired specialists, geologists, climbers, and even psychics, hoping that a fresh perspective might uncover something previously missed. Each new expert brought a glimmer of hope, only to depart with the same frustrating emptiness that had plagued the case since the beginning. Then, almost imperceptibly, a shift began. An amateur historian, while researching the area's indigenous roots, stumbled upon a long-forgotten journal detailing mysterious occurrences on the mountain. The entries, dating back decades, spoke of strange lights and sounds, and in one instance a figure who disappeared into the mist, never to be seen again. These revelations ignited a flicker of renewed interest. Could these ancient mysteries be linked to Oliver's disappearance? Was there a connection between the past and the present, a hidden pattern waiting to be revealed? As whispers of the journal spread, a sense of anticipation gripped Ashford, a feeling that something monumental was on the horizon, ready to shatter the silence that had enveloped the community for so long. The town held its collective breath, watching, waiting, as the mountain stood in silent vigil, keeping its secrets close. Would this new clue be the key to unraveling the mystery, or was it merely another path to nowhere, a false hope in the long-standing quest for truth? The answer lay hidden, waiting in the shadows of time, poised to step into the light. As the whispers of the journal spread like wildfire through the town of Ashford, the small community found itself divided. Some dismissed the journal as nothing more than folklore, a collection of ghost stories meant to entertain rather than explain. Yet for others, it was a beacon of hope, a chance to finally piece together what had happened on that fateful day when Oliver Hayes vanished into the mist. Emily Hayes, Oliver's widow, found herself caught in a delicate balance between despair and determination. The years of silence had worn her down, like a river eroding the edges of a stone. She had dedicated every waking moment to keeping Oliver's memory alive, to searching for answers that seemed forever elusive. Yet the journal's emergence was a lifeline she couldn't ignore, a new chapter in her relentless pursuit of the truth. She gathered a small group of trusted allies, friends, family, and a few dedicated members of the community who had never given up hope. Together they pored over the journal, dissecting each entry with meticulous care. They mapped the locations described in the faded pages, hoping to find a pattern, a clue that had been overlooked. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The once vibrant community gatherings became quieter, more subdued. The weight of the unsolved mystery hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of their collective failure to find closure. As the seasons changed, so did the town's resolve. Some began to accept the possibility that the truth might never be uncovered, that Oliver's fate would remain an enigma lost to time. Emily, however, refused to let go. Her private investigation transformed into a personal crusade. She reached out to experts in indigenous history, hoping to glean insights from those who understood the mountain's ancient lore. She spoke with climbers who knew every crevice and crag, listening for tales of unexplained phenomena, of others who might have vanished without a trace. Yet as the years stretched into a decade, the trail grew colder. The journal's revelations, initially so promising, yielded little more than tantalizing hints. The community's interest waned, and whispers of Oliver's disappearance faded to background noise, overshadowed by the passage of time and the march of everyday life. Still, Emily remained steadfast. In the quiet moments when the world around her seemed to pause, she would retreat to the small study that had become her sanctuary. There, surrounded by maps and notes, she would trace her fingers over Oliver's photograph, whispering promises of perseverance, of love unyielding. And then, just as hope seemed to flicker and dim, a new voice emerged from the silence. A young journalist, eager and unrelenting, drawn to the mystery that had captivated so many before. With fresh eyes and a relentless spirit, he sought to breathe new life into the investigation. He arrived in Ashford with a camera and a notepad, determined to unravel the tangled web of history, folklore, and truth. His presence reignited the town's curiosity, sparking discussions and debates long thought settled. Could this outsider, with his modern techniques and unyielding tenacity, finally uncover what had remained hidden for so long? The community watched with bated breath, old wounds reopening, as the young journalist began his quest. Would he succeed where so many had failed, or was the mountain's secret destined to remain locked in its icy embrace, forever out of reach? As Emily joined forces with this new ally, hope once again took root, fragile but unbroken, waiting to blossom in the shadow of Mount Rainier. The young journalist Alex was a whirlwind of energy and determination, a stark contrast to the resigned acceptance that had settled over Ashford. He brought with him not just an inquisitive mind, but a tool that promised to change everything: cutting-edge forensic technology, genetic genealogy. This new science, capable of unraveling the mysteries of the past, had cracked cases long thought unsolvable. For Emily, it was a beacon of hope in a sea of lost years. In the weeks following his arrival, Alex immersed himself in the case, poring over every scrap of evidence the authorities had once deemed insignificant. He spoke with anyone who would listen, rekindling interest and stirring memories that had lain dormant. And then, in a dusty box hidden away in the corner of the town's small police department, he found it. A single hair, sealed in an evidence bag, overlooked and forgotten. This hair, collected from Oliver's hiking gear, had been dismissed years ago as inconsequential. But to Alex, it was a potential key. He reached out to a renowned lab specializing in genetic genealogy. Their work heralded for solving cold cases through intricate family trees and distant relatives. Emily watched, her heart a tight knot of anticipation, as the sample was sent off for analysis. While they waited, Alex continued to delve into the town's secrets. He discovered old letters and postcards sent by Oliver, detailing his love for the mountain, but also hinting at an unease, a sense that perhaps he wasn't alone during his excursions. These revelations painted a complex picture, one that hinted at shadows lurking just beyond the edges of his solitary hikes. Then, just as the community began to buzz with speculation, the results came back. The lab had successfully extracted a genetic profile, and through a meticulous process of elimination and extensive genealogical research, they identified a distant relative. This relative, a woman living in a nearby town, had never heard of Oliver, but was intrigued by the possibility of a connection. Alex and Emily met with her, explaining the situation with the gravity it deserved. The woman, startled yet cooperative, agreed to help, opening doors to family histories and stories that had never before seen the light of day. Through this, a pattern began to emerge, one that pointed to a family member with ties to the mountain. A man who had lived in the shadows of Mount Rainier all his life, known for his reclusive nature and peculiar habits. As night fell over Ashford, Emily and Alex sat in the study, surrounded by maps and photographs, the air electric with the promise of discovery. Emily's eyes, tired yet hopeful, scanned the faces in the old family albums, searching for a sign, a clue to where this new path might lead. And as the clock ticked towards midnight, Alex's phone buzzed with a message that sent a shiver down their spines. "We found him," the message read. "We need to talk." With the dawn of a new day, a renewed sense of purpose filled the air. The pieces were coming together, the shadows receding, and for the first time in years, the truth seemed within reach. But as Emily and Alex prepared to confront this newfound lead, a question lingered, heavy yet exhilarating. What would they find when the final curtain was pulled back? The sun crested the horizon, bathing Ashford in a soft, golden light. Emily and Alex, hearts pounding with anticipation, made their way to the meeting point, a small cafe on the edge of town, where the smell of fresh coffee mingled with the crisp mountain air. As they entered, they spotted Detective Carter, the new detective who had taken a keen interest in the case. His eyes, sharp and determined, met theirs with a nod of acknowledgement. Detective Carter leaned forward, his voice low but urgent. "We've pinpointed the location where the distant relative's family member was last seen. It's an old cabin in the woods, not far from where Oliver supposedly fell. Local hikers recall seeing a man fitting his description around the time of the disappearance. This could be our breakthrough." Emily felt a surge of hope, tempered with a cautious optimism. "What do we know about him?" she asked, her voice steady. "His name is Samuel," Carter replied. "He's lived a life off the grid, known to be reclusive. But what's intriguing is his connection to the mountain, stories of him guiding hikers and his deep knowledge of its trails. Yet, there's more. We believe he might have been in the area the day Oliver disappeared." Alex's mind raced, trying to piece together this new information. Why would he have kept this quiet for so long? And why now, after all these years? Detective Carter paused, choosing his words carefully. "That's what we're here to find out. His reclusiveness might have been a cover, or perhaps he held onto a secret he felt was too dangerous to reveal. Whatever the reason, we need to approach this delicately. We can't afford to spook him." The morning air felt charged as they set out towards the cabin, the path winding through dense forests and rocky inclines. Each step brought them closer to the truth, yet also closer to the unknown. As they arrived at the clearing, the cabin stood silent, a relic of another time. Its weathered wood and overgrown surroundings gave it an air of mystery, a place where stories lay hidden beneath layers of time and secrecy. Detective Carter signaled for them to stay back as he approached the entrance, his footsteps cautious. The door creaked open, revealing a man in his late 60s, eyes wary yet resigned, as if expecting this moment. Samuel's gaze flickered over the trio, settling on Emily. "I knew someone would come eventually," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. "I've been waiting for the day I could tell my side of the story." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Why now, Samuel? Why speak up after all these years?" He sighed, his expression a mix of relief and sorrow. "It's time for the truth to be known. I didn't push Oliver, but I saw what happened. I've been haunted by it every day since." The air grew thick with tension, each word laden with the weight of untold truths and buried guilt. As Samuel began to recount his story, unraveling the events of that fateful day, a picture began to form. A picture that could either exonerate or implicate. Emily and Alex listened intently, their senses heightened, knowing that each revelation brought them closer to unraveling the mystery that had cast long shadows over their lives. Yet as Samuel's tale unfolded, a new mystery began to emerge, one that hinted at deeper secrets and unforeseen connections, questions that demanded answers and promised to upend everything they thought they knew. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the clearing, the truth felt tantalizingly close yet still out of reach. And as they prepared to delve deeper into Samuel's revelations, one question lingered, more pressing than ever. What other secrets lay hidden in the shadows of Mount Rainier, waiting to be uncovered? As the last light faded from the sky, Samuel's voice grew stronger, as if each word freed him from years of silence. He described the day of Oliver's disappearance in vivid detail, his eyes fixed on a distant memory. "I was hiking that day," Samuel began, his gaze distant yet intent. "I knew the trails well, had been walking them for decades. That's when I saw Oliver and his wife. They seemed happy at first, but then there was a change. An argument erupted. I kept my distance, didn't want to intrude." Emily and Alex exchanged a tense glance, their thoughts racing. "What happened next?" Emily urged, her voice a mix of impatience and hope. Samuel hesitated, his hands trembling slightly. "I saw them near the cliffs, heard shouting. It was Oliver's voice, clear and strong. He was angry, scared even. Then suddenly there was silence. I didn't see the fall, but I heard it. The sound of rocks giving way, the rush of wind, and then nothing." Detective Carter leaned in, his expression a blend of skepticism and intrigue. "Why didn't you come forward back then, Samuel?" Samuel's eyes darkened with regret. "Fear. I was afraid. Afraid of being accused. Afraid of what I'd seen. I couldn't be sure of what really happened, and the next thing I knew, Oliver was gone and the world moved on without him." Emily's heart ached with empathy and frustration. "But why now? What's changed?" Samuel took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. "I'm dying, it's cancer. The doctors say I don't have much time. I couldn't take the truth with me to the grave. It's haunted me long enough." The group fell silent, the weight of Samuel's confession settling over them like a heavy fog. Yet amidst the gloom, there was a glimmer of hope, a path to the truth that had eluded them for so long. "We need more than just a witness account," Detective Carter said, breaking the silence. "We need evidence." That's when Emily's phone buzzed, lighting up with a new email notification. She read it quickly, her eyes widening with astonishment. "It's from the lab," she said, her voice barely containing excitement. "They've applied new forensic technology, genetic genealogy, to some old evidence from the scene." Alex leaned closer, anticipation clear in his voice. "What did they find?" Emily swallowed, her heart pounding in her chest. "They've identified a new DNA profile. It doesn't match Oliver or his wife, it matches someone else entirely." The room went still, the revelation hanging in the air like a thunderclap. Detective Carter's eyes narrowed, his mind already racing through the possibilities. "Who does it match?" he asked, the question heavy with potential implications. Emily hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "It matches someone with a criminal record, a record for fraud and deception." Samuel looked up sharply, recognition flickering in his eyes. "I knew it," he murmured, his voice a mix of relief and dread. I always suspected there was more to the story. As the pieces of the puzzle began to align, the investigation took on new urgency. The shadows over Mount Rainier were beginning to lift, revealing truths buried beneath years of silence and secrecy. But with each revelation came more questions, and the team knew they were racing against time to uncover the full scope of the mystery. The night deepened, and with it the resolve to bring light to where darkness had long prevailed. Yet as the team prepared to dive deeper, a single thought lingered in the back of their minds. Who was the hidden figure lurking in the shadows of Oliver's last day, and what role did they play in his fate? Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she navigated through the email, each line revealing more about the person behind the DNA match. The room was silent, anticipation thick in the air. The name associated with the profile— "It's Henry Talbot," she announced, tension crackling around her words. Detective Carter's brow furrowed. Henry Talbot. The name doesn't ring a bell in connection with Oliver or his wife. Who is he? Emily took a deep breath, scrolling further. It seems Talbot has a history of white-collar crime, fraud, identity theft. He's been in and out of the system for years. But there's more. It looks like he was in the area around the time of Oliver's disappearance. Alex, always the skeptic, leaned forward. How do we know this isn't just a coincidence? A criminal wandering in the woods leaving behind DNA? It's not exactly unheard of. Samuel interjected, his voice steady and compelling. Remember the discrepancies in the financial records we found earlier? They were dismissed as unrelated, but what if Talbot was involved in more than just a physical disappearance? What if he had a motive tied to Oliver's finances? Detective Carter nodded slowly, the gears in his mind turning. We need to find out if Talbot had any interactions with Oliver or his wife, any connections that could tie him to this case beyond just DNA. Emily was already typing furiously, pulling up databases and cross-referencing records. If there's a link, we'll find it, she said, determination stealing her voice. The room was charged with a renewed sense of purpose. As the night wore on, the team worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of information, tracing Talbot's steps, and digging into his past. Hours later, Emily's voice broke the silence once more. I found something. Henry Talbot was working under an alias as a consultant for a company that Oliver had dealings with. It looks like there might have been some irregularities. Samuel's eyes lit up with the thrill of discovery. Irregularities that could have led to a confrontation, or perhaps a cover-up that went horribly wrong. Detective Carter stood, his decision clear. We need to bring Talbot in for questioning. If he's involved, we'll get to the bottom of it. But as they prepared to act, a nagging question lingered. Was Talbot the mastermind or just another pawn in a larger game? And if he was, who was pulling the strings? The scene was set for the next chapter of their investigation, the truth tantalizingly close yet shrouded in uncertainty. The clock was ticking, and they knew that each second counted in the race to expose the secrets buried beneath Mount Rainier's shadow. The air in the investigation room was thick with anticipation as the team gathered to strategize their next move. Detective Carter, Samuel, and Emily stood around a table strewn with documents, photographs, and a whiteboard cluttered with timelines and connections, each line a potential link to the truth. Emily, Carter began, his voice urgent yet controlled, I want you to dig deeper into Talbot's financial records. If he's tied to Oliver's finances, we need to know how deep this goes. Emily nodded, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. I'll look for any offshore accounts or hidden transactions that might connect him to Oliver or his wife. If there's a money trail, we'll find it. Meanwhile, Samuel was pulling up Talbot's call logs and emails. Let's see who he's been in contact with. Any unusual communications around the time of Oliver's disappearance could be a lead. As the hours ticked by, the team pieced together a complex web of financial dealings and shadowy connections. The deeper they dug, the more tangled Talbot's life appeared. It wasn't just a matter of a single confrontation or a simple cover-up. It was a labyrinth of deceit and betrayal. Then Emily's voice cut through the quiet hum of the computers. Got something. There are several large transfers made to an account in the Cayman Islands, right around the time Oliver went missing. And get this, Those transfers are linked to a shell company owned by Lydia Hawthorne. A heavy silence fell over the room. Lydia Hawthorne, Oliver's seemingly distraught widow, had been the last person anyone suspected. She had played the grieving wife flawlessly, her tears and pleas for justice seemingly genuine. Samuel shook his head in disbelief. Could she have orchestrated this? Used Talbot as a pawn to get rid of Oliver and take control of everything? Detective Carter's mind raced, connecting dots and forming a narrative that was both shocking and disturbingly plausible. We need to bring Lydia in for questioning. And Talbot, too. If they're working together, they might slip up under pressure. But even as they prepared for this next step, the stakes were rising. If Lydia and Talbot were involved, they were dealing with more than just a simple disappearance. It was a conspiracy, a meticulously planned downfall hidden in plain sight. The team knew they were on the precipice of uncovering the truth, but they also understood the danger that came with it. As they moved to act, a question loomed larger than ever. What lengths would Lydia and Talbot go to in order to protect their secrets? And as the sun began to rise over Mount Rainier, casting long shadows over the landscape, the team braced themselves for the confrontation that lay ahead. The team gathered in the briefing room, tension palpable in the air. Detective Carter leaned over the table, his mind racing with possibilities. "We need to be strategic," he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts. "Lydia's not going to crack easily, and if Talbot's involved, he's our wild card." Emily nodded, her eyes fixed on the screen displaying Lydia's financial records. "The transfers are our strongest lead, but we need more than just circumstantial evidence." Samuel chimed in. "What about forensics? Any chance we can tie anything physical to either of them?" Detective Carter considered this. There were fragments of a torn shirt found near the cliff's edge, he recalled. "We assumed it belonged to Oliver, but let's get those tested. DNA, fibers, anything that could connect back to Lydia or Talbot." Emily was already typing notes, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "I'll expedite the lab work. Maybe there's something we missed." As they plotted their next moves, an unexpected call came in. It was Dr. Lena Morell, the forensic anthropologist who had been quietly working behind the scenes. Her voice crackled through the speakerphone, laced with urgency. "I've got something significant," she announced. "There's a fracture pattern on Oliver's remains that doesn't match a simple fall. It's consistent with blunt force trauma." The room went silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Carter spoke first, his voice low. "You mean he was attacked before he fell?" "Precisely," Dr. Morell replied. "And there's more. We found traces of a rare mineral in the bone fragments, something that would be out of place in the natural environment of Mount Rainier." Samuel leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of mineral?" "Chrysocolla," Dr. Morell said. "It's commonly found in copper mining areas, but not near the mountain. It suggests he was somewhere else before he ended up there." Emily's eyes widened. Could that tie back to Talbot? His construction sites have been linked to old mining operations. Detective Carter felt a surge of adrenaline. If Talbot lured Oliver away under the guise of a business meeting or something similar, it would explain a lot. And if Lydia was in on it, she could have played the part of the concerned wife perfectly. Samuel interjected, "We need to compare notes with any sightings or suspicious activity around Talbot's projects. If we can place Oliver there, it strengthens our case." The pieces were falling into place, but they still needed that irrefutable link to Lydia. Emily's voice broke the momentary silence. "I'll pull surveillance footage from the days leading up to Oliver's disappearance." "Maybe there's something there. Lydia's car, any unusual meetings?" Detective Carter nodded. "Let's move quickly. If we're closing in, Lydia and Talbot might get spooked and make a mistake." As they dispersed to their tasks, the gravity of the breakthrough hung over them. They were closer than ever to unraveling the truth hidden beneath layers of deception. Yet, the specter of danger loomed larger, and with each step forward, they risked provoking a desperate and unpredictable adversary. Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting a stark light over Mount Rainier. The team knew time was of the essence, and as they raced against the clock, one question remained. Could they gather enough evidence before Lydia and Talbot's house of cards came crashing down? The atmosphere in the investigation room was tense, each member of the team driven by a mix of urgency and determination. As Emily sifted through hours of surveillance footage, she felt a knot forming in her stomach. The stakes had never been higher. The clock was ticking, and any misstep could allow Lydia and Talbot to escape justice. Hours turned into a blur as she meticulously scanned each frame. Then, suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. There it was, Lydia's car parked near one of Talbot's old construction sites, far from where it should have been on the day of Oliver's disappearance. Emily's pulse quickened. She played the footage forward, watching Lydia emerge from her vehicle, meeting Talbot with a quick, tense exchange before they disappeared from view. Emily's voice trembled with excitement as she gathered the team. "I've got something. Lydia was at the copper mining site with Talbot the day Oliver vanished." Detective Carter leaned in, eyes narrowing. "This is the break we needed. If we can connect them to the site, we can prove premeditation." Samuel, ever the strategist, chimed in, "We need to move on this fast. Any delay and they could destroy evidence or disappear." Meanwhile, Detective Carter's mind raced. He knew they had to act decisively but carefully. With the evidence mounting, he reached out to the district attorney, outlining their findings and pushing for an arrest warrant. The DA, initially hesitant, was swayed by the compelling new evidence. It was enough to proceed. As dawn broke the next day, a team of officers was assembled, ready to execute simultaneous arrests. The air was thick with anticipation. They moved with precision, descending first on Lydia's home. Her facade of normalcy shattered the moment they knocked on her door. Her expression shifted from surprise to defiance as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Simultaneously, another team approached Talbot's office. He was in the midst of a meeting, his confident demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding outside. When confronted, his reaction was one of disbelief, but the evidence was undeniable. The arrests sent shockwaves through the community. Lydia, the grieving widow, and Talbot, the respected businessman, were unmasked as conspirators in a web of deceit and murder. The town, once sympathetic to Lydia's plight, now reeled from the betrayal. As Lydia sat in the interrogation room, the layers of her duplicity began to unravel. Her public persona, a devoted wife mourning her husband, was a stark contrast to the calculating figure she had become. Detective Carter leaned in, his voice steady but firm. "You played the part well, Lydia, but we know about the mining site, about your meetings with Talbot. The evidence is overwhelming." For the first time, a crack appeared in Lydia's steely facade. Her composure faltered, and the gravity of her situation seemed to weigh on her visibly. She understood the game was up. Yet, beneath the surface, a new question emerged. What had driven Lydia and Talbot to such lengths? As the interrogation continued, the true motive behind their sinister alliance began to surface, one that would shock even the most seasoned investigators. But with the end in sight, they knew the final revelations would soon come to light, exposing the full extent of the betrayal. Detective Carter's words hung in the air, a catalyst for Lydia's unraveling. Her eyes darted toward the table, and for a moment the room was silent save for the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights. Then, almost imperceptibly, Lydia began to speak, her voice a whisper, heavy with resignation. "It started as a business opportunity," she confessed, her gaze fixed on an invisible point in the distance. "Talbot approached us with a proposal. He needed access to the land, and Julian was in the way." The confession dripped out slowly, like a leaky faucet, each word a brick in the wall of their conspiracy. Talbot's promise of wealth and influence had been intoxicating. The land, rich with untapped resources, was the key to their ambitions. But Julian had been an obstacle. Steadfast and principled, he refused to sell or negotiate. Lydia's voice cracked as she recounted the plan. The hiking trip had been a cover, a chance to stage an accident that would rid them of Julian and grant them access to the land. But the execution had been far from flawless. The guilt, a shadow she couldn't shake, had gnawed at her, even as she played the grieving widow. As the confession unfolded, Detective Carter's expression remained impassive, though inside he felt a mix of disgust and a grim satisfaction. The pieces of the puzzle were finally aligning. Lydia's betrayal was complete, her motivations laid bare. Meanwhile, in another room, Talbot sat across from a different detective, his bravado long gone. The evidence against him was damning: financial records, witness testimonies, and now Lydia's confession. Faced with no other option, he too began to talk, filling in the gaps of the sordid story. The trial that followed was swift but meticulous. The prosecution laid out the conspiracy in stark detail: Lydia and Talbot's deceit, their manipulation of those around them, and their cold, calculated actions shocked the community to its core. The jury, captivated by the drama that had unfolded, delivered their verdict without hesitation: guilty on all counts. Sentencing day came, and the courtroom was filled with the murmurs of a town still grappling with betrayal. Lydia, once a figure of sympathy, now stood as a cautionary tale. Talbot, stripped of his veneer of respectability, faced the consequences of his greed. Both were sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. In the aftermath, the community struggled to heal. The betrayal had cut deep, leaving a scar that would linger for years. Julian's family, once fractured by grief and suspicion, found a measure of peace in the truth. They chose to honor Julian's memory by preserving the land he had loved, turning it into a sanctuary in his name. As the years passed, the story of Lydia and Talbot became a somber legend, a reminder of the darkness that can hide behind smiling faces. Yet, amid the shadows, there was light, a testament to the resilience of those left behind and the enduring power of truth. Justice, though delayed, had been served, and in the heart of the community, a new resolve took root: to cherish the memories of those lost and to remain vigilant against the specters of deceit.